Hey, Nathan Bolt here, artist at Emergent Game Technologies, and in this video we're going to go ahead and export a character and all his animations for use in a game. Now, Gamebryo can export characters in one of two ways. You can either put all of your animations in a single file and export them all at the same time, or you can put each animation in its own file and export them all separately. Either way works fine. I've done every animation in its own file for this character, so that's how I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it. So the first thing you need to do in that instance is export out your base character, which is going to be your character geometry, your skeleton, and what we call a keyframe master file, or a KFM, which is going to associate your character with each of the individual animation files, or KF files. So to do that, you need to pick one of your animation sequences to use for the base character, and it's important when you're selecting that file to make sure that anything that needs to be animated in any of your other sequences is animated in that file. So if you've got a lot of different kind of sequences, you don't want to use an animation sequence that only animates the upper body for your base character, because if you try and put animation that animates the lower body, it's going to cause a problem for you. So in our instance here, I've got the Ironclad from Privateer Press, and I've gone ahead and made just a simple little idle sequence for him, and I've chosen to use this for the base file because I know that every bone in his hierarchy is animated in this file. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and create a character root for him. You can see over here I've got the skeleton and the geometry and his environment map all under a single node, so I'll go ahead and select that. And then up at the top here, right next to the dynamic texture, you'll have the create character sequence. So go ahead and click on that, and with that group selected, you're going to click on add selected. It's going to prompt you for a sequence name. This is his idle sequence, so we'll go ahead and put that in. Then you just need to tell it how long the sequence is. This one runs from frame 0 to 218, so we'll go ahead and type that in there. And this sequence does loop, so we'll go ahead and check that. Now, before we can export this out, we need to tell it that we're using a multi-file character. So under here, under Update Export Scripts, we're going to go ahead and change it from the default export, scroll down to Default Multi-File Base Character, NIF, and KFM. Click OK, click on Save, and then the second button in here is the one we click to actually export the scene. So let's go ahead and title this Ironclad, hit Enter, and it's going to go through and export the whole thing for you. And as soon as this is done, we'll go ahead and take a look at the KFM file that it puts out. So sometimes it takes just a second if you've got a particularly complex character. I think this guy's about 1,200 tries, so it's not too bad, but it takes a few seconds. So we go ahead where we wrote that out. This one right here is the KFM file. We'll double click on that to launch Animation Tool. And you'll see now we've got our character in here, and any sequences that were in the base file you export from are going to show up by default in here. So you can go ahead and click on idle. It'll play through the sequence for you. If you set it to looping, it's going to automatically start over at the end. You can pause it. You can scrub through the timeline if you want to double check any given part of it. Also, while it's playing, you can control the speed at which it plays. So now we've got our base character exported, so we can go ahead and export out the individual animations for him. So let me go ahead and open up a walk cycle I've got for him. And in this file, let me go ahead and open this up. You can see I've already identified the root character sequence. What we're going to do in here before we actually export this, there's this neat option called morph tags that you can use to synchronize different sequences to each other, and we're going to go ahead and set that up in this case with his feet. So we'll go ahead and find out when each foot hits the ground. So if you scrub through here, you can see that the left foot hits the ground about frame 5. So under morph tags, we'll click on add. We're going to create a tag called left foot down, and that's at frame 5. And if we scrub through further, you can see the right foot hits about frame 59. So I'll add another one called right foot down, and that's at frame 59. So now we've got some morph tags identified here. We'll go ahead and export this as a KF file. To do that, we need to use a different script. So export options over here at the top, you're going to click on Update Export Scripts, and in this case we want to use Default Multi-File Character Export KF only. So click on OK, Save, Export. We're going to call this one Ironclad Walk. And click on Export, and this will go a little bit faster since it doesn't actually have to write out any of that geometry, but it still has to go through and process this scene to see what's animated and what's not. So as soon as it's done optimizing, we'll go ahead and open our KF file, or our KFM file, sorry. And to add a new sequence to this character, you can just click on Sequences over here, and on the right there's a button Add Sequences from KF Files. So we'll go ahead and select our walk sequence, click on Open, and you'll see it got added down here. We have idle, we have walk. You also notice down here we have the transitions view. when you call these animations in game, it's not just gonna hop right from one sequence to the other. It's gonna pay attention to what you define down here. So default one is just gonna pop between them. But if we double click on that, we can set it to use something called crossfade. It's just letting you know you're changing it. And then you can change the duration. This is going to keep playing both animations and try and blend between them. So we're going to have it blend for about a second as it goes from walk to his idle sequence. And you can see now it's a little bit smoother transition. You have some other options here. You can use a delayed blend, in which case it's going to stop at the last keyframe of one sequence and then transition that to the first keyframe of the next sequence. So let's go ahead and make that last a little bit longer so you can see what it looks like. So that one in this case looks kind of dumb, but in other instances, if you have two sequences where the first and last keyframes don't match up exactly but are pretty close, you can use this to kind of fudge the difference. We're just going to go ahead and set this one to crossfade so it matches the other one. Now I mentioned that morph keys let you do something kind of cool. In this case, we'll need another sequence that also has the same morph keys defined, and I already have one of those exported. We've got a run sequence for him, and you can see that those came in with different defaults. So there's this run sequence. So to show you what morph keys do, first I need to show you what it looks like if you're trying to play these without morph keys. So we'll go ahead with sequence groups. This lets you play multiple animations on top of each other at the same time. On the right, we'll click on Create Sequence Group, and then we can just grab Walk and drop it in there, and grab Run and drop it in there. Now you can see he looks pretty funky. It's trying to play both animations at the same time, and they're not synchronized to each other, so his feet are just kind of bopping all around. But because these have morph keys, we have the option to synchronize them. So we'll go ahead and select his run sequence, and on Synchronize 2 you have the option to synchronize it to his walk sequence. That's going to retime one animation sequence to match the other based on where you have those morph keys. So right now it's 50% of his walk animation, 50% of his run animation at the speed of his walk. And you can also go up here and change the weight. So now it's just playing his walk animation. If we take the weight on walk down, now it's just playing the run animation, but at the speed of the walk cycle. So it's cool if you want to layer them on top of each other. The other thing that's nice about it is you can use it to control the transitions between them. You see now we have these arrows showing up down here. That's where your morph keys are. So if we go ahead and increase the duration of this, you'll notice that his legs don't dance around as if we were playing them on top of each other. It's still going to match up those important parts. Last cool thing you can do in Animation Tool, once you have all your transitions defined, you kind of want to get an idea what it looks like in game. Well, you can do that to some degree right here. We have the interactive preview. It'll pull up all your sequences. You can go ahead and identify your base sequence. It's going to play when you're not pressing anything. And then you have your keystroke settings, so you can identify each animation sequence with a keyboard button. So I'm going to go ahead and associate his run with arrow up and walk with arrow down. Click back in the main window. Now when I click those, it's going to play those animations with the transitions I've already defined. So you can see that it's going ahead and using those crossfades and morph keys. Once you got all your transitions set up and all your animations in here, up in the top corner, you can just click on the disk with the little guy, and that will save all your settings in here to the KFM file. After that, you're ready to go.